Hi guys, this is Jambi
and Val.
Welcome to Things Your Mama Didn't Tell You.
Hi guys, welcome back. Today we are going to explore a very heavy topic that started last week when Kenyans from all walks of life opened up about sexual abuse that happened at a very young age. And what was very clear was that sexual abuse is coming from quarters that we did not expect, from relatives, from parents, from siblings, and we thought that this was a topic that required a bit more in-depth conversation. So with me, I have Julian Nduta, an advocate of the High Court who deals with children's rights, and I have my colleague and fellow mom, Valentine, to discuss this topic. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Julian, most times we get people who tend to believe that sexual abuse is just the act of sex, and this is a misconception that is very common. So could you let us know what other forms of sexual abuse are there?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been a long time coming that we need to talk about child abuse. It happens every day, and even as we speak, there's a child somewhere in the world who is being abused. Sexual abuse is when there's a conception that sexual abuse happens when it's an adult with a child, but also sexual abuse can happen between two children. However, how you will deal with the situation depends on the parties that you are dealing with. When it comes to sexual abuse, people would only think that it's about sex, where the genital organs of one person connect to the genital organs with another. But when it comes to the touching of genital organs, breasts, buttocks, and all of that, and inserting of items, that becomes now indecent assault or an indecent act with a person. When it comes to now dealing with indecent acts, there's the law called the Sexual Offences Act. That was famous because of the Lady Justice Joki Ndongo. And so the thing that the law says in section 20 to 22 of the Act, it deals with what incest is. It deals with an indecent act with a child or defilement. Other sexual offenses include trafficking children for purposes of sexual exploitation. It also includes distribution of pornographic material. There are people who have been arrested for filming sexual related content that is for children, and there's actually a market out there for that. There's also child tourism, where down at the coast there's a lot of commercial sexual exploitation of children. It also includes prostitution. There are those people who actually force their children into prostitution. So sexual abuse is a really huge term, and it encompasses a lot, not just the connecting of, for instance, genital organs.
Just to follow up to that, does that mean that cases of defilement carry a lighter sentence than defilement? You know, cases of indecent acts carry a lighter sentence than cases of defilement, or how does the law now navigate those differences? Because when you look at it, really, it's still abuse. You know, if I have been molested in a way that does not involve genitals, does that mean that whoever has done it should carry a lighter sentence, or how does that work?
So sentencing is left, the law does give sentences. However, it's also left to the discretion of the magistrate depending on the circumstances of the case. However, the law puts a minimum or a maximum sentence for each kind of category. So it's good that you've talked about defilement, but maybe the one thing I'd want to clarify is we read in the news that a child was raped. That is the wrong term to use. Children are not raped. Rape and defilement are two different things. What you should call it is defilement, which is when an adult person has sexual relations with a child. And a child is anyone under the age of 18 under the laws of Kenya. And so when it comes to rape, the difference between rape and defilement is the issue of consent. Children cannot give consent to sexual relations in any setting. Even in contract law, children cannot sign a document and it becomes legally binding because they are under the age. They're not an adult making that decision. Yes.
So this discussion about the sentencing according to the ages, there was an interesting discussion recently about a 17-year-old boy who slept with a 16-year-old girl, and then it became a whole. So where's
Lowering
that?
the age of consent.
Yes. So the reason why, for instance, the movement for lowering the age of consent came about is to have a different way of, the law talks about what happens when it's a child and an adult, but the law did not really talk about what happens to the children. But essentially, if you read the law as it is, both of them are going to be charged with defilement, and that's what has been happening in courts. But what happens is you'd find that the boys are the ones who are being taken into the criminal justice system, whereas it was a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship and conversation. So when it came to now allowing children, the best practice has been that both of them are dealt with as children in need of care and protection. So they go for counseling so that they learn how to have healthy relationships with each other, where they know that these are the boundaries I am not supposed to cross, whether this is my girlfriend or not.
So ideally, taking them to court and prison and the whole 9
At-
yards for people under 18 is not really efficient.
So now it would be efficient where you're seeing that there is, where now the reason where it becomes different is when you have a child who's 17 who's going around with a 10 or a 9-year-old. That age difference you should have question marks about that. But when it's a child, when you're seeing that the age is very close, those are people who you can talk to, and then they learn how to have a healthy relationship. So that's what the court does. Those ones are treated as cases of children in need of care and protection. And then if you see that an older child is actually taking advantage of a younger child, of course that one should definitely go through the justice system. But the thing is, the justice system isn't there to punish but to rehabilitate. That's the misconception that we also need to start changing, especially when it comes to juvenile justice. But even for adults, anyone can change their behavior. Yeah.
So again, what are the factors that make children vulnerable to sexual abuse?
There are different factors. One is age itself. Children are young, and sometimes they can't make decisions for themselves when it comes to a situation where they would be in danger. And so by virtue of being a certain age, you're already vulnerable to certain attacks. For instance, when it comes to the area where you live, there are some areas that are where there's insecurity. Children are, of course, in danger because they are vulnerable. Then there's also the case of there's also the case where based on even sex, depending on also the area and the age of the child, that is a factor that also makes one gender, for instance, vulnerable to another. Anyone can be defiled, but there are other factors like where you live and who you are that would make you susceptible to sexual abuse.
And then based on the thread that the adults who are coming out to say is that abuse happened in the presence or in the care of their closest relatives, in the care of, they've been sent to Shago, or they were left with a nanny. How are those conversations in terms of vulnerability of children?
So it's unfortunate that you can put your child in an environment that you think is safe, but there's someone who has ill intention. I worked in an organization called The Cradle, where we do something called case trends, where we'd look at the cases that come through our organization, and we would actually see that most of the abusers are these people who are in the family. The Kiswahili saying kikulacho kingoni mwako. It's just unfortunate, and maybe just to take the conversation forward is ensuring that as families we have conversations and you're able to converse with your child, so that when they get uncomfortable about something, there's a reason they're uncomfortable about it, and they should be able to come to you you and tell you about it. And if it's not you, let them know that there's this other person they can trust in the family. And it's unfortunate that sometimes they feel like there's no one to run to and they're all alone, and that's why we are seeing now cases of people coming to talk about these things later. Yeah.
So Julian, the discussion about sexual abuse has been had over and over again, but sometimes parents, we feel like we need to, some parents, we need to be informed. What are the signs to look out for when it comes to our children?
There are the different signs, and also these signs depend on the age of the child. So there are times when the child, especially if they're young, they're not able to express themselves, but you can see, let's say if you're washing them, they start being squeamish, or they don't want to be naked, or they want to keep to themselves, or when they see someone, they start, acting very strange. Those are things that you should look into. There are also cases where the child, if you've taught them, for instance, how to call what they call their private part, and they start telling you that someone, touched them, they start talking about that, that's something you should look into. You see changes where they start wetting the bed, or if you shout at them, they act funny. It's all about knowing your child. Since you've been bringing up your child, there are things you will see some sort of behavior change depending on their age, and now those are the things that you should look into. Yeah.
And then there have been cases, just based on that conversation of adults coming out, is that some were actually abused by their siblings, some were abused by their parents.
Yes.
So I think the question now becomes, where does the law stand on those particular instances? And then, as a parent, if one child has abused their other child, how do you proceed with that?
So whenever blood relations have sexual relations with each other, the law considers it incest. And incest is basically when either a male or female commits an indecent act which causes penetration with a person who is, to their knowledge, either for females that's a daughter, granddaughter, sister, mother, niece, aunt, or grandmother, and they're guilty of an offense termed incest, and they're liable to imprisonment of not less than 10 years. And now, as I read the female parts, please read the male part. So it deals with incest by a male and incest by a female. So in the case of incest of brother and sister, includes your half brother, your half sister, your adoptive brother, your adoptive sister, and a father includes a half father, an uncle of the first degree, mother includes half mother, and an aunt of the first degree, whether they are legally married or not. So in the case where you see two children, my advice would be first to get them to go for counseling. And depending on the severity of the case, essentially this should be a criminal case, and I would tell people to pursue criminal if to pursue the criminal as the law says. But since this is a sensitive issue, take the matter, investigate the matter more, and so that you can be able to make an informed decision of the best course of action. So what has been happening in such cases is that families take it hush. And I don't know, through the thread and some of the things that you are showing in that thread was that a lot of the cases had been dealt with kinyumbani, or as a home issue, and according to the law, that is disrupting the pursuit of justice, because someone's rights have been infringed and someone needs to be protected from another person. And so I would urge people to seek the law to the best means possible, and also to ensure that these people's mental health is checked on they're taken to a psychiatrist or a counselor who they can talk to about these issues. Because maybe if you go deeper into the issue, maybe this is someone who was abused and now they're just starting to already abuse the other and transferring that negative energy. That's what I'd say.
And in cases where, say, something happened, a father raped that or defiled
Yes.
their underage daughter,
Yes.
and it's been handled kinyumbani,
Yes.
can somebody from outside decide to come and help?
Yes.
Child?
So the other thing that I would urge people to do, if you feel like in yourself you do not have the capability to go and report this, you can go to an organization and get legal assistance. There are organizations out there that would be able to give you a full package of legal assistance, or to give you legal assistance, to give you a psychosocial support, where you will have, let's say, individual therapy or group therapy or family therapy. These things are there, and so I would tell you, if you don't feel like you can go and report this case, go to that organization and you will get the help. And in the case where, for instance, this is a breadwinner, for instance, like a father, it also becomes a case of domestic abuse in the home, where the father also needs to be charged for, defiling a child. And in the case where, for instance, the mother knew about it and didn't do anything, she should also be charged with. Yeah.
That's very common for women to protect their
Yes,
husbands.
and yes, women do protect their husbands, and if you look into it more, maybe it's because there's financial blackmail that's there, and financial blackmail is a form of gender violence. So it's an unhealthy home for even a child to be growing up in, and so this child doesn't have to be removed from that family and taken to a center somewhere. Everyone grows up in a community, so the child can even be taken to, in most cases, the court will give the child to the grandmother, for the grandmother to take care of the child.
On the topic of organizations,
Yes.
can you give us maybe several organizations that are currently existent whereby anyone can get help?
So the several organizations that I will talk about are, for instance, the Cradle, the Children Foundation. They've been in existence for some time, championing children's rights. There's Pendekezo Letu as well. There is Plan International, World Vision. There is also Childline, that run a helpline for Kenyans, where Kenyans, in case they have a case to do with children being abused, you just dial 116 24 hours a day, toll free, and you can get to someone who will give you the help, or even refer you to someone else who can give you the assistance you need.
So for these organizations, assuming I have witnessed something, it's a walk-in, you just walk in?
Most of these organizations, I would tell you to call them first, but most people take clients between certain hours, and there are some that will give you services there and then, and there are those that will refer you to another organization. So if you walked into any of them, including even Ancan, which is somewhere in Hurlingham, you can always get information, and them, they deal with the protection of children from abuse. Yes.
Okay. So just a follow-up is, if, for example, I found out a child is being abused,
Yes.
step by step, right?
So, yes.
So do I call the police? Do I go to the police first? Do I go to the hospital? At what point do I get the medical form? That
Okay.
process. Yeah.
So the first thing that anyone should know is, in the case of any kind of sexual abuse, whether it's a rape or a defilement, but in the case now that we're talking about children, it's defilement, there is a campaign called the 72-hour campaign, where you should essentially get services that will protect you, yourself, and your body and your mind within 72 hours. And the first thing they say is, go to the police, make a report of what has happened, because that is a criminal act. And then secondly, go to the hospital. And
What will you get? Sorry, when you report.
so
you
when
get what
so when you get to the police, you make a report, you're given an OB number, and then you will be given a P3 form. This P3 form should be filled by a medical officer in a hospital. If they can, the police will escort you to the hospital. But even if you go to the hospital before you go to the police, it's okay. Because at the hospital, what will happen is you will be given medication that will prevent you from getting STIs, unwanted from contracting pregnancies, and also you will get some psychosocial support. And so the reason why you go there is, once you get to the hospital and fill in the P3 form, that will be used as evidence in court. And in the hospital, there is now what they call a PRC form, which is a post-rape care form, for instance, which goes deeper into the medical aspects of what happened to your body from the defilement. Another thing is within the 72 hours, it is encouraged that if you go to the police or the hospital first, do not take a bath, do not wash those clothes, put them in a khaki bag, not these paper bags that we've just banned, but a bag that is still breathable, because if you put it in like a plastic bag or what we used to call paper bag, it'll continue sweating, and so it'll tamper with the evidence, because even the clothes and your body, unfortunately, by then is part of the evidence that forms the case.
So it's very necessary between these 72 hours
Exactly.
that you do this process.
Yes, that you go to the police, you get help from a medical perspective, and that you ensure that you have correctly handled the evidence. So the experts, that's the police and the hospital, they will collect all the evidence that's on you and with you, so that they can have a concrete case against this person. Then from there, you do go to court. Yeah.
So is there maybe a provision for whatever reason I wasn't able to access a medical facility within 72 hours?
Yeah.
Is there some kind of provision for such cases?
There is no provision of what happens, that you should do something in 72 hours, but as for the reasons that I said, it will help with the collection of evidence and to prevent evidence and crime scene tampering. That's why you should go within 72 hours. But more essentially for your own health, that's why it would be necessary for you to go. But it's not in the law, it's just a best practice.
So for some
Yes.
cases,
Yeah.
because again, this is more of an awareness campaign,
Yes.
to be able to have that journey.
Yeah.
Have there been cases whereby maybe the child was cleaned up, there was no
Clothes were
OB
washed.
filed, clothes were washed? Does that mean that the case dies?
Not necessarily. If the case can be corroborated, for instance, by witnesses, and for instance, the police can find any other evidence that would help in proving of the case doesn't go. It's only that this DNA, for instance, that should be and would be collected in the hospital will not be there, and so the case is not as strong as a case that would have gone through the steps that I had said, but there are things that they could look into, other circumstantial evidence, for instance. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we skipped something. So let's say it has happened, a child has been defiled. What do parents need to do? Parents or guardians, the aftercare, apart from going to hospital and doing that, what else as a parent should I do?
Essentially, so that the child can understand the trauma that they've undergone, they should go see someone regularly to ensure that they can get their mental health checked, and they're given, for instance, things that will help them to be more trauma informed, because you may find that you'll go for one session and then there are things that will trigger you in the environment, and so it would be important for you to get to trauma informed help, where you also don't see yourself as a victim, and that you can overcome and move from victim to survivor. Yes. So for instance, if there's a guiding and counseling teacher and you feel like this child connects with that teacher, they can continue seeing that. Just don't let the child be withdrawn and get slowly slip into a dark place. That's what I would say. And just don't always treat them like someone who has undergone a traumatic thing. Try and make life for them as comfortable as possible, to where you see they're engaging in a healthy way with everyone. Yes.
So in terms of with the process you've told us, we find that the law is coming in a lot, right?
Yes.
So where does the law really fit in terms of protecting these children?
Yes.
And then the government in terms of setting up structures
Okay.
to help with this?
Okay, so the first thing is the supreme law of our land is our constitution, and Article 53, 1 and 2, it talks about the child has a right to be protected from any kind of abuse, neglect, harmful cultural practice, all forms of violence, inhumane and treatment, and at the end of the day, in all decisions concerning a child, the best interest of the child should be of paramount importance. So in the case where, for instance, you're seeing that a certain decision that will be made will not be in the best interest of the child, that decision will essentially can be taken to court, and also you're asked why exactly was this really in the best interest of the child. So in every action, I would tell a parent, guardian, or anyone who's dealing with a child, any decision you make, is it going to be in the best interest of this child? When you post the picture of this child who has been abused, for instance, if you publish a story and the identity of, for instance, this child has been left bare, how exactly when they grow and they grow up, how exactly will they be? What kind of environment have you left for them? Are they going to feel secure? So you need to ensure that the best interest of the child has been dealt with. And also the courts are now becoming more child friendly to ensure the child is not traumatized by seeing the perpetrator who actually abused them. And the thicker law courts, for instance, are one of the courts that have been turned into child-friendly courts. There's also now the Children Act of Kenya, where it says in section 119(1) that children basically have a right to be protected from abuse, and they are considered children in need of care and protection when they are in abusive situations. The Children Act as well, in section 15, has a section where they talk about children being protected from sexual exploitation, which includes prostitution, inducement, or coercion to engage in any sexual exploitation, because we see people who are forced, people who are threatened into doing certain sexual acts with others. So the law actually protects the children. And the other thing that the law does, it has set up structures such as the Office of the Director of Children's Services, who is mandated to ensure that he works towards ensuring children are safe from abuse, all forms of child abuse, and also sets up what we have children officers in what used to be the former districts, who work closely with the chiefs, so that even in the devolved structures, there is someone who you can run to in all matters concerning children. There is also the National Council on the Administration of Justice that is headed by the Chief Justice. It's a group of law enforcement coming together in partnership to ensure, for instance, that the legal justice system is even friendly for children, and takes now into consideration, for instance, where we are seeing the parents who even have like nanny cams. They push for things like having progressive laws, and that also would include, for instance, the collection of evidence, and these new emerging trends that are coming up of abuse, where we have pedophilia, online sexual abuse, where most times you will see now, it's different when you used to go to the farm. Now children have phones, and there's someone chatting with your child, and they're grooming them, and one day that person will tell them, oh, come, I buy you something, or where do you live? And this child thinks they have a friend and gives out the information of your estate, the place where you live, and this person comes and abuses your child. So as parents, I think we need to be to engage more with our children and create an atmosphere where our children can open up about issues, and also read more and to find out what are the rights your child has, beyond even the space of protecting them from sexual predators that are out there, because it's a full-time responsibility, and you are first teacher, and then you let the child out to the school. So ensure that also your schools and even the workplaces where you know people are working with children, you have a child protection policy, for instance, and this is what will happen in case, for instance, you go against our child protection policy. interrogate who is this person you're leaving your child with, what's their character, have they handled children before, empower your child to be able to open up to you if this person, for instance, is sexually abusing them. Also, the police have in place, for instance, centers called child protection units, where children who have been rescued from like such homes, or they have been left somewhere, they can actually go there before they are placed in now a protective system. So they also have, police stations should essentially have fully equipped child protection units where children can go. And for instance, if it's a child who's giving their witness statement and it's a girl, she will talk to a female officer, or if it's a boy, talk to a male officer. And another thing I'd want to emphasize, especially with the boys, we've seen that yes, ladies and girls do get sexually abused more, but the reason why we'd also say more is we don't have the numbers of what happens to boys and men, and that comes from a place where we are not having conversations, and we don't have a society where a man can easily open up and not face stigma that he's not a man because this and this happened to him. So that also needs to be said and emphasized.
So guys, you've picked up all the elements, especially for us as parents and guardians, on how to prevent and how to deal if it actually happens. We're going to have a child psychologist in our next episode who's going to explain the psychosocial elements around child abuse, and we hope that you guys will actually learn a lot more from it. So thank you for your time. Please catch us on our podcast and we will keep you posted.